one of the other episodes I listened to before having our chat today was an episode I did with Dr. Chris Palmer, author of Brain Energy, wonderful book.
Mhm.
I invited Dr. Nick Norwitz onto the show to interview him, and I was just kind of a participant. We also had Brett Lloyd on the show. He reversed his deep depression and suicidality on a carnivore diet, and I see both sides on this, and so I want to get your opinion and your observation as far as this goes. Chris Palmer made the point that like a ketogenic diet is not that easy. It's not easy to do. There are some situations I think that are warranted. It's maybe they don't have the education, they don't have the money, carbohydrates taste really good. And there's that one side of people that say, like, look, doing this is really, really, really difficult. Dr. Thomas Seyfried is another one I've personally pushed back on when he says, like, this is too difficult to do. A lot of people are not doing this. And I showed you before we got on the air the foot of somebody I did a consultation with 4 years ago. That foot is really nasty, amputated just this last week. And you think, like, for these people, maybe it is too hard. But Nick Norwitz answers and says, well, it's not so hard for me. And Brett Lloyd answers and he says, I eat burgers and I'm not depressed. And I do the same thing. Like, I can eat meat and just meat, and I feel such a lower amount of anxiety that's not that hard. What are you noticing with compliance on getting on this diet? Is this very, very difficult, or can this be very, very easy?
It depends on the person and what is going on for them. I just heard Chris on a podcast recently, and he said something out loud. He often does this. He'll verbalize something and I'll be like, oh yes, I'm so glad you said that. I have that experience too. But he's he's often the first to kind of say it out loud. And I thought it was really great. And he was like, you know, 2 weeks into the diet, he said something along the lines of, you're going to tell me this is too hard, that you can't do it, that you're just not, there's no way you're going to get better. This is not the ticket. This is not for you. This is not, in alignment with who you are and what you want or whatever. And he talked about how he tells them, look, in 3 months, you're going to tell me how easy this is. You're going to tell me that this is doable. I feel so good that maybe I could do this my whole life, or something like it, or something close to it. And he's right. That's what happens. If I have someone who's going to drop out of working with me, it's going to be within 2, maybe 3 weeks. And I think it's, that's, as Chris says in this podcast, that's when they start to miss their foods, their comfort foods. That's when they start to try to go out, or maybe their partner is bringing stuff in. They start to struggle a little bit. And so there's that. I also tell people, you're not going to have the same brain. So they find that it can be very, very difficult, but a brain on ketones works better. And that means it plans better. It isn't overwhelmed by cooking, where before it was overwhelmed by cooking. It isn't it works better. Your brain works better. Your motivation goes up. There's a change in, transporter function. There's great things that happen to your brain on a ketogenic diet. And so you're not always going to be struggling to do your ketogenic diet with the same brain that you're using leading up to your ketogenic diet, trying to figure out how to reduce your carbs and what to eat instead.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, having mental illness is way harder than being on a ketogenic diet. I promise you, you are already dealing with something super hard. And then they say, well, I don't want to add this on. I'm already dealing with this really difficult mental illness with these horrible symptoms. Why would I add this additional hard thing on? And I tell them, because the only way out is through. The only way out is through. If this is a treatment that's going to work for you, the only way out is through. And they'll, they will endure medication side effects that I would never put up with, that I would tell the doctor, forget you, I'm not taking this. And they see that as part of the core, right? Part of the process of having a mental illness and dealing with this hard thing. Well, a ketogenic diet is an adjustment. It's something that you have to kind of work through to get to the other side to see if it's going to be helpful for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In this episode of Chris Palmer, he already mentioned things like people are doing electroshock therapy. People are doing deep medications that have crazy side effects. People get cancer, they poison themselves and get irradiated. Like, people are already doing hard things